So I'm a big fan of the Harry Potter films, and it just so happens that Boris FX's products were used on several VFX plates for the series. In this two-part video tutorial series, we're going to take a look at how we can use Mocha AE to corner pin track live action shots into newspapers, as well as photo portraits to bring scenes to life. Let's get started inside of After Effects. So in Harry Potter, whenever you pick up a book, a photo, or even see a painting, it happens to come to life. This was done with the help of green screen setups, not to mention corner pin tracking in post. We can do this with Mocha AE inside of After Effects, not to mention use several Continuum-based effects to integrate these live action shots into the scene. So let's break down tutorial number 1, where what we're going to do, inside my composition, we're going to take this shot that's playing back, and we're going to corner pin it to the shot underneath. We'll also have it integrated into the scene. So step 1 is to take the background clip, and let's head to the animation menu. We're going to track this inside of Boris FX Mocha, or Mocha AE, which happens to ship for free with After Effects. If we click on the big Mocha button inside of Effect Controls, you'll be inside of the interface where we'll begin our track. First thing to do is to find a plane that we wish to track. If I play this back, obviously it happens to be the corners of the photo, but I can see that there are a few foreground objects that might get in the way, which happen to be the person's thumbs. One way to tackle this would actually be to create shapes around the thumbs and then place the corner pin layer underneath this. It's going to take a look at those shapes that we've already tracked and ignore that motion. But there's an easier way to do this. We're going to select the rectangle X tool to create a thinner shape around the baby here. I'll head to a corner in order to rotate this. I'll notice I'm in the middle of this shot. I'll bring these corners in a bit, just making sure that the shape isn't going to come into contact with this person's thumbs. The magical part about this is that this shape doesn't happen to be the corner pin information. I'm going to come up here to show planar surface, not to mention planar grid. We'll see a separate set of controls which represent our corner pin and the perspective. And we can just set this up here for our photo. Depending on the information in the scene, you might want to hold down the Z key temporarily to zoom in, followed by the X key holding down temporarily, just to check to make sure that your points are accurate. I'll press Shift 8 to zoom out. Now that we've defined this thin shape, let's track here in the Essentials tab, Translation, Scale, Rotation, and Skew, and I'll track backwards. We can see that thumb on the right-hand side gets a little bit in the way of the right-hand corner, but it seems to hold up nicely. I'll move back to the first frame that I tracked, and then click the Track Forward button. The left thumb doesn't come into contact with the inner shape. And now it's just time to check the accuracy of the actual corner pin. So I'm just going to press the backward play button. Taking a look at those corner pins, and it's holding up really nicely. Just for a bit of reinforcement, I'm actually going to head into the properties of this layer that I created and turn on a logo before we head back into After Effects. I'll go to the layer properties, and under Insert Clip, I'll change this from None to Logo. Again, pressing the play button to play forward, and seeing how our footage is going to hold up. So this is looking good. Time to exit out of Mocha. Don't forget to save. And we won't see anything just yet. So first off, let me turn on my foreground plate, which I want to have corner pinned into the scene. And with my background plate selected, I'll click the disclosure triangle next to tracking data. And the first thing to do is to create the data inside of After Effects. We only had one layer inside of Mocha AE. So with that selected, let's press OK. And now we have a bunch of keyframes here in the tracking data section, which we can export as a corner pin to any layer that we want. And I'll choose, instead of None, the actual foreground clip, which I'll apply as an export. And voila, that clip is now corner pinned to the scene. Not to mention, if I select it, we can see an After Effects corner pin effect already applied to it. Let's play that back. And this is looking pretty good. At this stage, if you notice any drift inside of your corner pin, keep in mind you can use the Adjust Track module for complicated tracks, not to mention just redefine your shape area, or even use keyframing to assist you with the process. So I'm happy with this, and it's time for integration into the shot. The first thing I'm going to do with my foreground clip is do a search under my effects and presets for an After Effects effect called Color Link. I'll apply Color Link to the foreground clip, and I just want to make sure that Color Link happens to be before the corner pin effect. This allows us to sample color from this clip or another clip. So first off, let's choose under Source Layer, our background plate. We're also going to select Stencil Original Alpha, and then just choose a sampling method. So do we want the brighter colors in the image, max or minimum RGB? I'll choose max RGB in this case. And then follow this up with a blend mode. Let's use add. And then bring down the opacity of the color link effect to see how that feels. We can choose another sample method, such as median or brightest, followed by another blending mode, which might suit this better. Now let's take a look at a couple continuum-based effects. Under Effects and Presets, first thing I'm going to do is type in BCC, followed by a plus symbol. And right there in the Art Looks category is an effect called BCC Borders. I'll double-click it to apply it to the selected layer, and like I did with Color Link, apply it before corner pin in order to see it on my shot. If you head to the effects editor, you can choose from one of several different types of borders, which is perfect in this instance. Not to mention, work with the parameters here on the right-hand side. Instead of choosing a border preset, I'll head to the top where I'll choose Custom, and this allows me control over a size parameter, which I'll set to be really small, 0.5. I'll then increase the roughness of this and change the color of that to a black. We can vary this further, and I'll apply this so it shows up inside of After Effects. Noting that I can bring this up just a little bit, I'll head here to the size value inside of Effect Controls and set this value to be higher, to a value of 3. So we're going to add a reflection to this photograph to add a bit more believability to the scene. One way to go about this is to find a piece of stock footage that represents roughly the color as well as the atmosphere that you want to convey for which the person is in. Other thing that you can do is just turn around and shoot behind you if you've actually shot these plates. In this case, I have a piece of footage that I'd like to use, so I'll head to my project inside a reflection folder and just apply this above my clip. And since I want this shot to be reversed, I'll press S for scale, unlink the scale values, and then just type in -100. Now I only want this reflection to show up inside the photograph. So one thing I can do is just toggle my switches and modes until I see track matte. And we can use the shot, which happens to be corner pinned, as our track matte, but just keeping in mind that it actually turns it off by default. So I want to turn on that track matte layer. I'll press T for opacity on the reflection and bring this down quite a bit to a value of 15. If you don't like the intensity of the actual reflection, of course we can bring down the reflection even further. And we can even play around with speed values to make sure that it feels just right. Now last but not least, let's perform some color correction here on this shot. I'll add an adjustment layer here from the layer menu, which I'll rename Film Stocks. And after BCC Plus in Effect and Presets, add the word Film, and apply film stocks to that adjustment layer from the film style category. I'm going to click to head inside of the effects editor. And one thing we can do is go into a specific category here at the top, such as color films. And you'll notice a number of film stocks that we can easily apply to the clip. Alternatively, under category, we also have movie looks, where you can choose from some of your favorite movies, including Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. In some cases, this effect might be too strong, but rest assured we can head to the parameters. I'd like to add a little bit of grain to this shot. Not to mention, change the size of the grain to 2 and make it monochromatic. And next, I'll also add an vignette by bringing up the opacity parameter value. Once I apply this, it's going to affect all of the clips underneath. And if you're looking for Harry Potter inspiration, one site that you could head to is shotdeck.com. You can sign up for free, and if you just do a search for Harry Potter, you can find some of your favorite style frames here. And by simply clicking on one, you can get a sense for the color within the shot. Not to mention information such as the film stock used, frame size, as well as aspect ratio. Now, last but not least, if heading back to After Effects, we still have the problem that the actual photograph that we're using happens to be on top of the thumbs. And in order to complete this, we need to make sure that the thumbs appear over top. Now, there are 2 ways of accomplishing this. So let me head to a new composition, to Harry Potter Complete. Has a slightly different color style in this case. But I'm going to head to the layer that I added over top so we can just take a look at this, and I'll move this later on. And there just so happens to be 2 masks on this for the left and the right thumb. In this instance, if I head to Effect Controls, I happen to use Mocha AE. There are 2 shapes representing the right and the left thumb here inside of Mocha AE. If I look at the right thumb, we can see that it's been trimmed just for the time that it's on top of the photograph. These little green ticks represent keyframes in order to make sure that the shape was perfect as the thumb flexed. And it should be noticed that in this instance, we might want to have 2 shapes representing the 2 planes of the thumb. If I close down Mocha, this information was used, and under the matte section, created AE masks which were applied to that layer. Now, another way to go around this, if I solo out this shot so we can just take a look at it and turn off the masks so we can see the entire shot, is to use Primat Studio to try to key out colors within this shot and keep the hands based on the saturation levels. That could then be applied over top of the image to create this final composite. So that's how you can corner pin live action footage into a shot using both Mocha AE and Continuum. For more tips and tricks just like this, give us a thumbs up, not to mention subscribe. Follow me for part 2 of this series where we do a newspaper fly-through using just Boris Effects Continuum.